and Jeff, thanks for joining us here on the Science of Psychotherapy podcast. It's really great to have you guys here.
So glad to be here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and hello from Richard. I'm in a different city, but still just great to be connecting with you. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, guys, I'm wondering if you can just give us a little bit of a backstory leading up to, this wonderful book of yours. Where did it all come from?
I think it started with all of our tensions and fights in our own relationship. And what we found that we kept repeatedly fighting about was that balance or tension between love and work, and wanting to be home, wanting to be with our family, wanting to be with each other, but always feeling cold and with our careers and our ambitions and wanting to change the world and do great things. And so we fought all the time.
We continuously do.
Yeah.
Right. What sort of jobs were you guys doing, or are you doing?
Yeah, so I lead a nonprofit organization called Plywood People, and we live in the States, and the community that we lead, they all are launching startup projects, some for-profits, some nonprofits. Over the last 10 years, we've worked with over 700 startup projects. And
wow.
So these are very ambitious people who care very deeply to make some kind of imprint on the world or some social cause in some way. And yeah, so they're all in, oftentimes making very little money to make it come to life. And at the same time, they're in relationships, and that's really hard.
Yeah, and I am completely opposite. I'm in medicine, and I work for a city hospital here where we live in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And what was interesting for me, guys, because I mean, as people can hear, not deep science backgrounds or therapist background, but actually this is exactly what we need in the therapeutic frame. We need to have the science, of course. It's always good to have the balance. But we also need to see the humanistic approach. And what I loved was, first of all, in your book, it says, and us, look at us, we're fighting away. But you interviewed a whole bunch of people. In your blurb, it says 100 working couples. So whether it was a few more or a few less, I always love it, the nice rounded out for the publicity. But looking at just what it really is like, how did people, or how did you approach those interviews, and how did people feel about sort of suddenly talking about, well, yeah, we fight all the time, or we don't? I'm so interested to see what you found as you went through.
The funniest thing is when you say that, like, the hardest thing about this whole thing is trying to get two very busy people on a video phone call at the same time and get our schedule on the phone call at the same time so we can actually interview them. 4 crazy busy people to try to make a time for us to interview. So that's kind of part of the reality. We've interviewed over 100 couples. We also partnered with a research firm called Barna in the States. And through that survey, we did another 1,500 individuals that are in working couples in addition to that. So we did both a qualitative and quantitative research project. And we learned a ton along the way. For us, it's funny, you guys talk about this community, there's a lot of therapists and people like that. It ended up being kind of like counseling for us over the last 100. I mean, like, that was definitely part of it. But should you want to share some of the things we learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always start every podcast, every interview with wanting to just hear their backstory and their love story. And I think that eases people into the conversation of having those hard conversations about the struggles and tensions. Because when you just talk about love and how you first fell in love, you get all those warm, good feelings going, and it then ends up going in a better place. But we definitely have to get to the hard places. But we found it really interesting. A lot of the things out of our survey of 1,500 working couples, that 83% of couples think that working has made them a better parent. And I thought that was pretty surprising to me. I think for me as a working couple, I look around and I think sometimes working makes me feel more stressed at home sometimes, or I come home with more stress, and then I could, display that onto my kids and all those things. But then after digging further into that, just really realizing that it actually gives me this separate place. It gives me a place to be me, my full self, and in a different context of being a mother and diapers and whatever else that you're doing with your babies. And so it allows me, it connects me to and tethers me to really like my purpose and who I really am. And it gets to be my separate thing. And so I think I see that now. I resonate with that now a lot more. So.
Right.
It's interesting. Sorry, Matt, you go.
So yeah, I want to back you guys up a bit, because we started off talking about you guys were fighting a lot, and it was kind of like, so we're fighting a lot, let's write a book. Like, which isn't the usual approach.
Yeah. No, we're fighting a lot, so let's get curious and let's ask questions and let's see if other people are also fighting a lot and having these tensions and struggling. And so it started really with those 100 interviews, and started to ask these questions. Is this happening to you? Do you feel these same things? Is this what's going on? And then from there, leading to the research project, the survey. And then from there saying, wow, we've seen a lot of commonalities, through all these 100 of interviews, through our research that's coming through, and saying, I think we can find some threads through all of this and then write a book. We're not the experts. We're really just gathering from all of the curiosities and questions we've asked.
Well, that's how people become experts, by learning, by finding out stuff. I mean, I'm listening to you here talking. We're not counselors, yet what you did was you met with people, you established rapport, then you found a safe place, and then you took them to the hard places. There you go. That's therapy.
But isn't it? It's extraordinary too that this approach. We're having a problem, so let's go on this research journey to discover, maybe some solutions. And I think it's remarkable that this has ended up as the book that we have.
Well, and I think one of the things that when we were really wrestling through this, when we first started talking about this was about 10 years ago. It was our first child. And we were trying to figure out a new moment in life, and what do we need to change personally to sustain our relationship? And we started looking around at the historical heroes that we point to as world changers, right? As people that, wow, I don't need to say the names, all the people come to mind. And when you also look at the history books that coincide with these leaders, oftentimes their families were the ones that were impacted most negatively.
Right.
And so we were like, man, we don't have examples of this. We don't have examples where there's heroic people that we want to live life like, and emulate, that actually were able to sustain their families. Like, we feel like there's got to be a way to do this. Is it even possible? And I think one of the things for André is, like, we both care very deeply about what we do and how we do it. And we want to continue.
Yeah, there was that really interesting film I really loved years ago. Jimmy Stewart was in it, called The Man in the Grey Flannel Suit. And the essence was, he was coming up, he was very good at what he was doing, he was given the opportunity to go into the big boardroom, and he found out that what he would have to sacrifice is his warmth and comfort and engagement with family. And so and he decided to choose that. But it was really interesting hearing you talk, André, that sense, when I'm at home, it's sort of like there's this confusion and curmudgeon of things. You're a diaper washer, you're a this, a that. But then there's that space and opportunity at the work where you can have your own sense of engagement. Is that broadly what people were saying in the surveys?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, I'm sure, has their separate reasons and things. I think some people, with realizing how working makes them better parents, it's a lot like they've time managed, so learned so much time management that they realize, when I come home, it is children, and this is their time, and they focus so heavily on them, and And I think a lot of people do that too, where that forces them then also to just really engage and be a better parent when they're home, because they're gone for most of the day too. So I think there's a little bit of both. I think that there's ways where your life has ended up kind of shifting and shaping so that those time blocks are there. But then I also think, for me, it's a little bit different in the sense of finding a purpose in a place that's mine, and then finding something also very valuable in the home space as well.
No, that's lovely, isn't it? Because we don't want to not be in a place that's mine. Some people can find it just being at home with kids, but I think that's a really important point, that the self is something that means something to us, and if it's sort of confused, or if it's doesn't have a solid groundings, then that changes. And a lot of therapists out there were saying, that changes reality, and it changes this and that. But sorry, Matt, you were going to say.
Yeah, can I just ask about expectations? So, we want to be sort of the heroes out changing the world, but we want to have, fantastic families. We want to live healthily. And so there's really high expectations sort of, in every area. Is it a matter of having to lower our expectations in all of those areas, or is there some other? What did you find?
Well, I think let me kind of go back to a little bit of the research we found. 95% of the people that we interviewed believed all this is possible. 95. The optimism was out of this world, right? Wow. But simultaneously, 52% of the women said they are exhausted while trying to maintain that. So on one hand, yes, it's all possible. And on the other hand, I'm worn out. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I can't do all this. And so I think what we really learned was it's not just can you do it, it's how do you maintain all these things while trying to perform on all of them, right? What are things you can do for yourself in the midst of trying to do everything for everyone else?
Yeah.
Right.
And
so we're talking.
We sacrifice ourselves in a lot of ways. And then when you're talking about the expectations, I think in a sense, and we've heard this from a lot of people that we interviewed, is that those three things, change the world, stay in love, raise a healthy family, they're almost definitions that you have to define for yourself, right? So my definition of changing the world really is very different than what yours would be, and what Jeff is even. So, and for me, defining that and changing that and keeping that into without comparison, without, trying to be somebody else, I think is different. So it's those expectations can feel really high if you're going to compare yourself to these great world changers out there, or if you're going to say, for me, changing the world is staying home and impacting my kids and doing well with virtual homeschool. I mean, that's changing the world for a lot of women right now. And so I think it's the definitions, right?
And the definition will determine the longevity of being able to, hold all of these things together.
Yeah, that be the change, I suppose, you want to see in the world. Is that, was there because that was just a thought, that sense, and as you were saying, Andre, sort of finding my own self, getting a clarity about who I am. Is this something in the research that came out? And of course, you're talking to men and women. I mean, we're just sort of focusing a little bit too much on one side, that sense of losing a clarity of self, or not, or having yourself separated between, and this is of course what you're saying, love or work, and the conclusion of course is that that's not good for you. So how did people did you find them finding themselves? I mean, if that makes sense in the question, but in relation to what you're talking about, did that come out in the talks?
Losing themselves definitely comes out, I think, a lot. I think women especially, I think we have this thing, I don't know what it is, if society puts it on us or something puts it on us, of this idea that we sacrifice all of us, for our family, for our things, for whatever it is. And so when we sacrifice that, we sacrifice our physical, mental, spiritual health. And so I think it was shown in the survey, only 29% said they're satisfied with their physical health. Only 39% are satisfied with their spiritual well-being, 41% with their mental health. I mean, those are all low numbers. Only 8% of working couples go to therapy. Like, these are crazy low numbers that are showing that we're not prioritizing, we're losing those things that belong to us, my soul, my spirit, my physical body. Those are mine and only mine alone that can take care of that. And so that sense of learning, finding yourself in that way and changing that.
Yeah. Does this have to do with having permission to, from a social perspective, having permission to be these things?
Well, actually, what was really interesting in the research we found, especially in kind of talking to so many people, working couples where both of them are doing purposeful work, they each often believe their own work is most important.
Right.
So it's, and we're that way. Like, both of our purposes are more important.
I am saving lives.
She is saving lives. Yeah, throw that in there, right? But specifically, 3 out of 10 of the people that we interviewed feel encouraged by their partner to pursue their work or dreams. Only 30% feel that.
Wow.
And I think for us, like, if you're going to stay together, you have to be in support of the other person's purpose and work. That means, like, absolutely, I have to take responsibility at times for the kids and vice versa. So that was a big part of something we took away from all the research we did.
Yeah. And so again, we can give each other permission to thrive and to be, what we're aiming to be in those positions, right?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And I think for women, even just voicing, I don't know, I felt like in the book I wanted to give women permission to say, these are my wants, these are my needs, these are my desires, and I need to tell you them because I need you to help me. I'm overwhelmed, I'm exhausted, it's already said it in the research. I need you to give me some room, some space, some help so that I can become, this better place, this better person, in a better, healthier state. And so I felt like that's what I was really trying to push for women in the book. And I hope that came through for sure.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lovely, one of our people we've spoken to and written for us, Ken Bernau, and he talks about trauma and resolving various things. And he talks about that, like you're saying, he uses the word delight, having delight in yourself. So you say, this is good, I'm delightful. It's a lovely word. But then he said, what really shifts you into the next level of joy is when you take delight in the other person's delight. Just kind of what you're saying there, and I'm, this idea, and I'm just wondering how much sort of delight and how much the couples you were talking to actually started to think about the other ones. Really what made the difference was that they were able to talk about their stuff. So that's actually one of the problems, is that no one gets a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I think we had a big, we call it our biggest fight ever, but I'm sure there were more.
It's the most memorable.
But it was that first year of motherhood when the baby, I'm working full time, I have this baby, all my life has shifted. I'm up all night with her still, I'm still working, I'm still doing all these things. And so meanwhile, he's still doing his normal life, traveling 4 days a week, gone all the time, showing up when he can. But his life is the same. And I think for a whole year, I slowly just built this, like, I thought this was what I was supposed to do. I'm the mother, but yet building this resentment and bitterness towards him, like, are you going to change? Like, is anything different for you? You know, this is world's different for me, but is anything different? And so it all blew up at a dinner, his birthday dinner.
It was my birthday.
For Jeff.
Good choice.
Yeah, great timing.
So it all blew up, but it was that moment where it was finally this release of all these things that I've held in, and that I realized, like, why am I thinking that I'm the only person that's supposed to be doing this? When did I get into my head that that all child rearing becomes only delegated to me, the mother? Like, last time I checked, you created half this child too. So, like, we should be both in this together, you know? So it was a big blowout. And the most important thing about this story is that I had a partner that listened and changed and made changes. And I think that is a true testimony to Jeff, and really hearing his partner, and then really making, like, life changes that would support me and help me more, you know. But we felt it.
I mean, that's cool, Jeff, because what about you? Suddenly you're hearing this stuff. How surprising was it? How much, I mean, there's that sense of where the women, and it is, we're looking at these stereotypical things and these social education, women are supposed to do this and women are supposed to do that. But equally, there's these things that men are supposed to do this. And one of the things that men seem to be in this sort of negative stereotyping sort of issues we're talking about is they're supposed to not to pay attention to the difficulties, you know, to other people's difficulties, because they've got their own. And it's one of the problems that we come across sometimes in couples therapy. How was it? How much of a surprise was it for you when she started saying, "And this has been pissing me off for a year," you know?
Yeah, well, it's always interesting hearing the story now, because I'm like, I thought we went through this 10 years ago, but some things are still coming up in this. I had no idea what she was talking about. Truthfully.
Yeah.
And there was so much within her that was waiting for this moment to come out, you know. The resentment was building and building and building, and it all came out in this moment, and I was clueless. Yeah.
But I think your mentality, wasn't it more like provision? Like I think he thought, and when we're talking about like gender and role typing, he thought about like providing. Like, you were providing for me.
Yeah, which is a family of origin kind of concept. But that isn't really who we are, which is kind of
your
funny.
Family of origin was that.
Yeah, so it was like in that moment, I just had to kind of comprehend what she was saying, to first understand, you know, to be like, to even like, wait, where is this coming from? I thought this was going to be a fun weekend. We were away, you know, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, the things she's saying were so deep within her, and I could experience. I knew that. I knew so much about who she was. Like, I was like, this is something more, you know, and I had to change.
Yeah. Now this story is you're definitely not an outlier. So I'm guessing that you've heard similar stories in your interviews and talking to other people. And
so many. Yeah. So many. And some of the interviews, they're in it right now.
Yeah, we uncovered it in the middle.
In real time. Like, we've gotten text messages from many people after interviews. It was like, yeah, we signed up for therapy or counseling or what, like. And we've been in it ever since, you know.
but another positive side, although I know it's funny, but that sense of, we actually have to find our own way. It's not only finding that individual space, but we actually have to find, we need to find the couple space. I know Orville Hendricks, who you might not hear, but he did a lot of things called Imago Therapy. But basically, what the process, and he was taking this out and actually doing it in rooms with 5,000 people, 4 cities, you know, and fundamentally, it just got people to sit down and listen to each other. And instead of interrupting, the only thing that the other person was able to say was, "Is there anything more you want to say?" Instead of, no, you're not allowed to jump in and say, "I disagree." And it was really interesting It's almost like the social system that we've got now is so unusual that we've got to relearn or redetermine how to engage in these elements of work and love at the same time.
Well, and I would say, remember that you have to invest in your relationship.
Yeah.
This is something that was very common. The couples that were maintaining their relationship, we're involved in some way in counseling or therapy. The ones that were not taking time, energy, or investment in their relationship.
Right.
This was a commonality of something we saw.
Apart from being in therapy, what are some of the keys to maintaining relationship?
So one of the funniest ones is the simplest, and this is our survey was almost fully American.
They were teasing us about the American way. Well, here it is, right?
Here it comes. Aussies always tease. I'm sorry about that.
So these people are completely exhausted, and yet they don't take vacations.
Only 41%.
41% would take a vacation,
Use all of their paid vacation.
All of it. So, over 60-something percent or 60% are not. So it's just insane that, you're so tired, you're so exhausted, you don't feel like you have time for yourself, and then you still don't use your free, like it's free on the bingo spot, and you don't use it.
Because, and for us, we have found like that's the time that we reconnect in the busyness of life. That's when we can actually have a night where we unpack what's working and not working, both in our relationships and our schedule and all this stuff, to be able to edit and make things differently. So that's a huge thing we found.
Yeah.
What about extended family, the uncles and aunts and grandparents and various useful people like that? Did they come into the story terribly much?
They came in as like community. So we call it family in a lot of senses. If you don't have the extended family close to you, you make those friends family. And but that community, the village concept of raising children and helping each other with childcare and supporting and driving and things like that. So they definitely came in the sense of absolutely have to have community to help you with it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think another one that was really consistent was this, I think you kind of alluded to it, but like the individual concept and then the together concept. So needing both individual time by yourself and then also couple time. But I think we forget that when you're always together, especially, we're in COVID right now, so we're always in each other's spaces and together. But this idea, we had heard another therapist friend of ours talk about the 4-4-4 principle, like 4 hours of time to myself every week. He gets 4 hours of time to his self every week. And then we try to get 4 hours of time together. And that seems like a lot, but I think the concept is it doesn't matter the hours. What matters is that the individual time is there for both of us, so that when we do come together, the connection time is more valuable because we've had that individual self time.
Yeah, I know Susie and I, we work together, which is great, but we hardly ever see each other because we're so busy, even though we're a room apart. But we certainly have lunches. But we drive to work. It's about a half-hour commute, and then we have a half-hour commute at the end. And it is the most wonderful time. And occasionally we have an argument in those, which is no fun. But sometimes we say a lot of things. Sometimes we don't say anything. But I think that's really quite something, that a time that you dedicate, because of course we could do that drive and pay no attention to it, be thinking about something else and miss the whole experience. So that's really important.
My wife and I do the same sort of thing, although we So we work from home. My wife does some homeschooling at home, and I'm working from home. But we make sure every afternoon we go for a walk, and make sure we have that walk time. Partly because we need to get fit, but primarily to connect. And Richard, what you do really well, you guys, you do the holiday thing really well. So
we're a bit older, I must admit, but we holiday. We did become great fans of cruising, which is very bad at the moment. So,
of all the places on the world, you will not be this year.
I know, but I learned. But someone said to me when I was beginning in the other marriage, my first marriage, but they said, take a week off, and this is going back to your holiday things. Take a week off from the kids every year. Now, it's not always possible, and it hasn't always been possible, but I remember every now and again that we managed to do that, and it was sort of like you're saying, it allows you to rediscover each other and go, you've changed, you've grown, you've those sorts of things, and I can see that that's the sort of stuff that you were finding. Again, how did that come out in, is there any sort of, because there's some lovely percentages you're giving here, which are really, I know people will go back and re-listen to those, and there'll be those that'll grab the book. But that sort of percentage of people who did enjoy those times, or what did you find about that?
Did enjoy the holiday?
Or enjoy time to, that we're having time with each other or not having time. Did you ask that specific question?
No, but I don't know if we said it quite like that. I will say that there was a couple that we interviewed that was really interesting, and they had done a lot of world travel. This is Jason and Danica Russell. And their kind of scenario was less about just time for the two of them and more time as a family traveling. Right. So they ended up basically taking their kids out of school for a year, and they visited all these countries to have these kind of life experiences with their children. Wow. That was really transformative, and not only for their individual relationship, but the relationships with their kids. And but it was interesting how I think we heard over and over again when the more busy that the two adults are, people in a partnership are, when they separate, that's the time that they find to reconnect and
separate from what they do.
Yeah, separate from their work.
Yes, not separate from each other. Yes, that's right. Connect with each other.
Right.
Well, I would suggest that the couples that are arguing and having difficulties should buy your book and go and have a holiday together, and spend the time going through.
It was actually really funny. We got a video from one of the couples after it came out. They were on their 10th anniversary. They were on their anniversary, like literally laying in bed together, reading through the first chapter, and then they were like, "Yeah, you already brought up a lot of things we got to talk about." So it was like, "I think that was good. I don't know." Yeah,
very good.
Ruin their anniversary, but it's not. I say that jokingly. But this thing of talking to each other, this thing of actually, what is this thing? Sort of getting to the hard places, is something there has been a tendency, and in a variety of cultures, particularly Western, to sanitize your experience. Everything's fine. I remember the soap operas, and they were bringing some of them back, or the little shows, and they say, everything will be okay. Well, actually, sometimes things aren't okay, but it's okay that they're not, as long as you work with it. And that's what I think is going to be a real beautiful thing that people are going to see. And there's nothing better than looking at other people and to realize that you're not the only one doing this, going through this experience.
Yeah.
That's what we hope. I mean, in the book, we have lots of questions that you can talk through with your partner. And we hope that, when we talk about success of this book, what we hope is that the success is that they communicate more with each other, they ask each other questions, they grow closer in their partnership. That is our major goal in this book. And I think, that's what we hope. That together.
That's a pretty good goal.
Brilliant. Now, your book is available pretty much wherever you buy good books, and you've got an Audible version.
And it's us. So
it's you guys.
Talking, yeah. And the book is all about our struggles. I mean, we go into it. We share with our partner, our listeners. We share our biggest fights, our struggles, and you'll get it all. Nice, close, and personal.
That's lovely and very generous. I always find it generous when people disclose and open. But what are you doing other than helping and making life better for others, giving people the opportunity to go from that, and we applaud that. But perhaps I think we've run the length of our piece of string. And we want to thank you so much for joining us. Is there a sort of a last parting thing, or have we really wound this up?
I mean, I think one phrase that we do say, and we have to remind ourselves often together, is that if we change the world and we lose our family, we lose. And so we're on a very long path of pursuing purposeful work, but we don't want it to be at the sake of these children that we love so much. And I think each other, yeah. And so that would be our last thought, is like, this is super complicated to try to, like you said at the beginning, like, we want to do it all. We're Americans. We want to do it all, right? But at the same time, one of the greatest things we can do is raise, for us, 2 kids that live out their purpose in life. And so we're trying to do that every day.
Yeah,
wonderful.
That's a pretty good all. Yeah.
André and Jeff, thanks so much for joining us here on the Science of Psychotherapy podcast. It's been wonderful chatting.
Thank you so much.
Bye.